Hey guys, welcome to another Watchmen Tower of Babel breakdown. My name is Dan D'Souza. I'm joined by Jeremy Kozier.
Hello.
We also have our in-house producer here, Julian Meush.
What's up?
And we're here today to break down episode 4 in HBO's Watchmen series. It's called If You Don't Like My Story, Write Your Own. Not entirely sure if that's like some sort of meta commentary
Yeah,
or
but
not.
why is it called? Like, why?
Yeah, that's what...
Maybe through a discussion we'll learn. And find out what it's- why
Okay,
it's
so
called
I
that.
guess, yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, we're here to talk about the show as the show itself. There will be references to the source material, the Watchmen comic, written by Alan Moore.
It is a sequel, so
Yeah, it's inevitable. But yeah, let's get into the episode real quick before we do. Please make sure to follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast, and check out our Patreon, Tower Babble Podcast. Wait, what is it?
No, it's
Patreon.com.
patreon.com/Tower
Yeah.
Babblecast. That's BABBLE. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who didn't know. Yeah, so Jeremy, what did you think of the episode?
wasn't my favorite of the
Yeah,
four so far. More questions again.
It's
A
getting a
couple
little, like,
answers, but not
Not
really.
It's kind of getting frustrating because like it makes this show what we're doing difficult because it's just like, well, I don't know what's going on.
Do you feel like it? Are you getting like Lost vibes? Like this is like Lindelof's
Yeah.
baby. So like, I mean-
there might be some crossover there. It just seems like this more so than Lost, though. It does seem like there is a plan. It's just right now there's no way to know what that plan is.
well, you got to assume he learned his lesson out of Lost, saying,
He did,
it would
he
really be handy if we had mapped this out ahead of time.
Well, that's why he gave all the outlets 6 episodes in
Yeah.
advance to kind of review it on that basis.
Not us. We didn't get that.
No, we don't have that point.
One day though,
Over
Jeremy.
6 years, but
We can just write them.
mounted to nothing.
We can write them a letter. We can't even get into TIFF, Jeremy.
Hmm.
I've been trying. Well,
We'll figure.
I wrote a letter 2 years ago trying to get into TIFF. It didn't work. I'm gonna. They'll remember me. I'm gonna send them a new letter this next coming TIFF.
Yeah, and to get back to Watchmen, just
yeah.
real quick, the episode starts on a farm.
We're introduced to the Clarks.
Okay.
Katie and John, I believe they're called.
Okay,
right?
yeah, just
A couple of egg farmers, right? Just trying to sell eggs.
Just living
They're
their
just
life.
having no luck, right?
Yeah.
And then we find out that Katie's
That her eggs don't work.
They're
Yeah.
non-viable.
Yeah.
They don't work.
So-
introduced, and then we introduced Lady Trieu.
which is going to be a huge character going forward. She's sort of like the new Veidt, essentially.
Yeah.
She's like this big corporate
Oh.
power that's
Wheeling
in
that she
control.
bought. Yeah, wheeling that she bought his company.
Yeah.
Which is she's using a lot of his technologies and research labs. This clock tower that's going up is very
More than a clock tower.
Yeah, very reminiscent of what was Adrian Veidt's base called?
Karnak.
Karnak, yes. With the
So-
tropical setting.
Yeah, so
inside.
and she even has its own vivarium,
Right,
like he had
right.
in
He
Antarctica.
had a vivarium as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And a vivarium is different from a conservatory in what
Um,
sense?
This one is vivarious.
Okay. The actual episode itself opens with like cracked, like the Watchmen logo is like cracked egg.
Yeah, because
like egg yolk.
Katie and John are selling those eggs,
Yeah,
right?
eggs.
And it's super funny because that song's playing.
It's so good.
and then what song is it? Like Sonny and Cher or some shit like that?
Yeah,
Like
it's
very
amazing.
feel good
Yeah.
70s vibe
Yeah.
song. And then at one point, Katie spills the
egg.
eggs.
I know it's so, she drops the
I
egg.
burst out
I
laughing.
know. I burst out laughing when she looks up and then like her husband's
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
He's like,
that's funny too.
He's
Well,
like,
the egg-
well,
yeah.
don't worry
The
about
egg-
it.
Yeah, then we see a montage
Yeah.
of a perfect couple,
Yeah.
but
Not
no
perfect.
no kid in
Not
sight. right?
perfect.
That
Not
doesn't
perfect.
make you not perfect. It's
No, but
just
like not perfect in like we know
But
that
that's
they've
what
tried to
that's what
have
they
kids.
want.
Yeah.
in their view, they're not.
Yeah.
And so we're introduced to Lady Trieu. We know that she's a billionaire, but she corrects them actually, trillionaire,
That's
she
right.
says.
It's an important distinction.
And that she lives in Tulsa, but no one ever sees her. And
She
then
comes
says
out
she
for
only
things that are important.
right?
Yeah.
And then this is one of those things. And then she puts
Here's the
a
question.
timer
though.
on it
Yeah.
for 3
So
minutes.
here's the thing. There's lots of stuff that's happening in this scene. First question: when in the timeline, like whereabouts does this
is-
take place?
I think this is old because if we fast forward to the end of the scene, right?
Mhm.
There's like some sort of meteor crash.
Yeah. Right.
And then we transition to present day where the Greenwood Center is like
Mhm.
nearby.
So it can't be that far in the past because we know she's been there for a couple years
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the thing is being built.
Yeah.
And we see when they fly in like 2 episodes ago, they look out the window,
Mhm.
right, and they see it being built. So it has to be around
It's
now.
within a couple
But
years.
all we know is that she wants their house, but more importantly, the 40 acres that it's on,
Right.
because that thing crashes there.
Yes. Okay. So I'm glad so happy you noticed, took
Okay.
that out as well. Daniel had a different perspective a little bit.
I only say that because she says
You have 3
it's-
minutes.
What
Yeah.
well, she and when what is that thing? She says it's mine.
Yeah. Because I think the way it comes off in the very, when she puts the timer down is very cliche. Like, oh, I'm a millionaire. All my time is very
Mhm.
valuable.
But it's
But
because
it's
the time
not
of-
because of that. It's actually because she knows when that thing is going to
Yes.
fall. I think, anyway. I think you
yeah.
could read it either way, but I think that's what.
That's how I saw. Did you see it differently, Dan?
No, I just thought that she looked surprised towards the end of that scene. That's not important though. So the idea there is that she owns the property, and because it lands on her property, it belongs to her.
Mhm.
It's a weird distinction. Whatever. The implication of that though is more important. It means that she's likely communicating with Manhattan or Veidt on Mars. We're also at the point with this episode assuming that Veidt's on Mars in a bubble.
I think but
But if that's the case, then from what we glean from this episode, wouldn't Lady Trieu have to be in contact with Dr. Manhattan to kind of
right. It doesn't make any
work
sense.
that-
Yeah, it doesn't
yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah, so we have no idea what that meteorite is, but it's something that's from space. We're assuming sent from
Some sort of
Manhattan.
space junk, perhaps,
just to fast forward to Veidt, though, he could also be on the moon because the transition out
Yeah.
of this sequence
is the moon.
and then we go to
That's a good
Sister
point.
Night.
That's actually a really good
Yeah,
point.
either way, it's I think effectively the same, but he's in prison and likely
Yes.
off Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But before we jump ahead, we learn that Lady Trieu is able to create humans, and that's how she offers the Clarks
Cloning.
Yeah, cloning.
But we know
Yeah.
through reading Pedia. Fuck, I hate that name. We knew through reading Pedia last episode when we recorded that Veidt's, Veidt Enterprises or whatever it's called. I think is that what it's called?
Veidt International.
Okay. Veidt International, they went through like a down period right after the squid attack.
Right.
But then came back by using some of his cloning technology that he used to make his pet cat thing. Bubastis. So we know that there's cloning technology that Veidt had, and we know that his company was bought by Lady Trieu. So therefore, she might not have had it on her own, but either way, through some combination of either acquiring or inventing it on her own, come up with cloning, because essentially that's what that is. And her daughter probably a clone.
It's a
right?
clone of her, I would
Yeah.
assume. It's a mixture of cloning and genetic engineering.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's what's it called today? The technology to edit the human genome, or to edit the genome. You guys know what I'm talking about? CRISPR. It's called CRISPR.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we have technology similar to that now. It's
On a
very
much
much
lower
It's
scale.
very much lower scale, and it's very much outlawed by basically everyone, including the Chinese, because the guy tried to clone a human recently, or no, edit a baby's genome recently in China.
Yep.
This doctor missing now, just gone. Has never been heard from again. Just go. I think the phrase is disappeared.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know where we left things off, but
That's pretty much it. We learned that she's involved with these clones, which can, be similar to Veidt and the clones he has, which we will visit later, I guess, when he fishes those babies out of the water.
yeah. Okay, I don't want to jump ahead to that yet, but that scene's so weird. What do you guys make of this first introduction to Lady Trieu? I think that's a good, important question. She comes off as being very cold at first, but then also has that joke about I'll be forced to destroy the baby. And he's just kidding. Obviously, we'll just find it at home.
No, it just she's a fairly ominous character. It kind of feels like she's pulling a lot of strings. She clearly has ulterior motives or some sort of master plan. Again, very reminiscent of Veidt. They both seem like they feel like they're above people, in some cases, literally, and they use people as pawns essentially for their own machinations.
Yeah, she felt pretty unique to me, especially with the quirkiness and that humor.
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
There's a great scene later between her and Regina King and Angela, where they're speaking in Vietnamese.
Vietnamese.
What is it?
Yeah,
Vietnamese.
What did I say? I said that. That's what I said.
Almost.
Vietnamese. I think that's what I said. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
and that's a crucial scene when we see
Yeah.
them connect that way and mention Will. So
Right.
we it's affirmative that
I've
she
never-
is the friend in high
Yeah.
places.
It's very beautiful. I've never heard that one before. Okay, so blah 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 blah. We were at the house. When happens after the house?
The meteor lands, and she says it's hers, and that's it. Then we jump into the episode.
Any
and are
guesses
just-
on what the meteor is?
Yeah, it could be literally anything at this point. I wouldn't be surprised.
He's so you know why he's so upset. He's so
I
angry
would
right
not
now.
be surprised if it turned out to be just a box of babies that turned into like it could be anything. There's no way to know.
Yeah, there's no way to know.
I bet you there's a hint somewhere in this episode, but
It's maybe some sort of technology. Again, I'm operating on the assumption
Dr.
that it's from
Manhattan related. Maybe Manhattan knows the importance of Lady Trieu and what she brings to the table in terms of the bigger plot plan that's going to happen. Right?
Dr. Manhattan really opens a bag of worms because like his ability to see time, like, wait, did I say bag of worms?
Yep.
Is that
that
the
a thing?
saying?
Well, they're usually in a
Can of worms.
but
they're usually in a can. But like,
it's because it's a mixed bag and a can of worms. That's what you did.
Yeah. To be fair, I do like mixed metaphors, so I'm actually totally fine with that. But yeah, like his ability to see through time, like
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I have a workaround for that. I think when they say that the clock tower is more than a clock tower, it might have something to do with tachyons, and it might be blocking him.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it's very clear that
it has
the
some sort of
tower has
significance.
like it's definitely some sort of ship or machine that will make something happen.
Well, no shit.
Like how Adrian Veidt used his technology to bring the squid, right? This is something to that degree.
It's the same thing because you have to nerf Manhattan somehow because otherwise he is all powerful essentially.
Yeah.
And just jumping ahead, like the look of it is very alien-like. I don't know, that last shot, it looks kind of alien. I got squidish kind of vibes with the eye kind of in the middle of it. And also the shape of the top of the tower, like that eye kind of logo. In the PD files, there was a letter.
We can't call them pedophiles.
There's a letter addressed to
pedophiles.
Chief Crawford, Judge's father,
Yeah,
I guess, when he was a sheriff, from John Keane, the senator with the Keane Act,
Right.
welcoming him into some sort of organization. And then it's signed with a logo that appears to be the same.
Looks like the clock.
Looks like the clock tower, like this eye kind of.
Man, fuck this show.
So what you're saying is that like there's some sort of like Illuminati thing going on.
There's connections everywhere, right?
Well-
They talk about the connections in this stuff.
I also really like when she's like, "Oh, so you guys are
thermodynamic miracle, right? Which is
Yeah.
the connections.
yeah, really such a great. That's probably my favorite scene of the whole
Yeah.
episode, by the way.
When
they're in the-
Angela uses it later
no,
on? Or
when they're in the
Laurie brings it
car.
up?
When they're in the car, yeah, I think that scene's great.
I think it's cool that Angela uses it again before
Yeah.
she is connected with Lady Trieu and Lady Trieu
Yeah.
speaks to her.
Right, like the whole like. There's a lot of connections. There's almost arguably too many to keep track of.
But either way, with Sister Night, she's in the process of destroying all evidence in the bakery, including the wheelchair, sawing it apart, and then puts it in a duffel bag.
She wasn't going to burn the letter, but then she accidentally burns the letter.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's true. It's the last thing to go.
Yeah.
And she accidentally burns it from listening to a voicemail from the Greenwood Center with new details on her family history.
So what are the logistics of that? Is there like someone working behind the scenes, like with records and like DNA?
It all
stuff?
sounds very automated, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then there's a cool slick scene where she breaks into the center, but utilizing her cover as detective.
Yes. Which is again, how can you tell the difference between a vigilante?
Right.
And yeah. So like
it's the classic like who watches the Watchmen.
yeah.
She calls it in because she knows how to
Yeah.
phrase it in such a way that
Yeah.
it doesn't look like she's guilty of doing it.
And then it's cool when she's walking through, the holograms are popping up and
Yeah, and
they're
the
recounting stories of
Yeah,
1921.
and the KKK one's super ominous when she
Yeah,
walks
because they just
past
like
it.
follow her. They don't
Yeah.
say anything. There's just two guys in
It's
hoods
super creepy.
watching her. Yeah.
And then she has to get this acorn that has.
So
it.
this part is fucking weird, guys.
No, okay,
Right?
no, it's not
part-
really.
I would just say it's part of the experience to go to Greenwood, right?
Yeah.
To
I just
grab
it,
this
it
acorn,
feels
which is a seed.
it feels a little overproduced. It feels a little like if
Well,
you want to
it-
think about it, it doesn't make any.
It makes
sense.
perfect sense. What are you,
if
what are
you're
you
gonna-
talking
if
about?
you're gonna take it out of the context of breaking in there and it's dark and no lights are on.
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm
you
saying
go
like
there during the
I'm,
day.
I'm picturing a
take
day.
your
There's a
family.
lineup.
Yeah.
People wanting to. And
Yeah.
there's
The
one
kid
acorn at a
grabs the
time.
acorn and you wait in line.
There's also presumably multiple places to plant your. Like, there's more than one tree location, probably, right? So it's not just one tree.
Well, he just said the greenhouse. Take
yeah,
your
but like
acorn
you
to
said,
the
you can go
greenhouse.
into the ancestry,
Yeah.
which I like.
I don't know. The recording says, "And you're in luck," or something to that effect. You're in luck because there's nobody there right now.
Right.
So it's vacant.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just it's cool. It's cool visuals, and it helps us, even though we already understood basically her family
Yeah.
tree, but it
Yeah.
helps to visualize it.
It confirms that her grandparents are Will and June,
Yeah.
And then there's 2 other matches, her great grandparents, which we've been introduced
seen,
already,
yeah.
which is Obi Williams and Ruth.
Mhm.
Right.
But there's like a gap there. I feel like there's still not like a ton of information. Like she knows her parents, right? But they died. She said they died when she was young.
Yeah, but those are the
Right.
question marks.
Yeah.
And it just says that they all died, including Will. But she says, no, you disappeared. You came into my life,
Mhm.
fucked shit up, then you disappeared again.
Well, it's dumb because it says they all died, but like
According to the
if she's their grand, like that makes. If she exists and it lives in the world,
Right.
doesn't. That's not how that works.
Whatever algorithm you're using probably should have caught that, right?
Yeah. They all died.
Your
You
grandfather
are a
died.
thermodynamic miracle.
Either way, she gets her answers and she
Yeah.
says, "Leave me the fuck alone." And that's
It's
where
such
we
and
end.
her. By the way, her performance in that scene is really, really good. I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. I think it's weird that you get hung up on the weirdness of the Greenwood Center. I thought that was really cool. In my I read an article. Sorry, I take that back. I read the headline of an article that said,
Very good.
that
Probably
said,
got a lot of valuable information out of that, eh?
well, it's like,
You got all you needed to know.
I got
Right?
everything I need to know. I got everything I need to know. It said that HBO's Watchmen does better lore than most video games. And so like
4 episodes in.
exactly. So like I think this counts as is that lore
Yeah.
or understanding of world building, and just again, this is just how it works. And to me, it made sense. You know, I guess to Dan, it made less sense, but
It was a little silly.
but you got again, this is a world that doesn't have the internet, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's it. That is a good point, actually.
So like there's no ancestry.com that they can go to and find their family tree.
I think it's create the logistics of it to create this virtual reality
Mhm.
tree every time somebody drops an acorn that they get from another area of the building. Like you can see why that sounds
Yeah,
silly,
but it's
right?
so cool. You have an acorn
Yeah.
for your tree, Daniel.
It's encoded.
No,
it's
no, no.
encoded.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I get it.
Right. Okay. So what happens
And
next?
then, so this catches us up with Lori, who's outside where the car falls,
Right.
and then we get confirmation that this is indeed Angela's car, and they
Yeah.
meet up.
So it's also important, I think, to note that this episode itself picks up before the last episode ended,
Mhm.
and then it catches up
us up. Yeah.
like to the moment of the ending of the last episode.
Right.
So much so that they had to have Lori Blake doing a fake laugh.
Mhm.
It sounds really
It's a
stupid.
little forced.
It
yeah.
sounds really bad. Ha 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 ha. And then turn around and point a gun. It's fine. It's just I thought it was just, it's a fun little thing to do to mesh timelines like that.
Yeah.
But it just just probably just reuse that laugh sample and not have her actually make her do that again. But anyway, yeah.
And then I thought it was cool that she kind of ties up the call of the break-in with calling in for a tow for this vehicle that she found outside. Kind of
Stolen vehicle. Yeah.
kind of closes that whole loop off. And then what we learn here is that the pills are still in the car, so she grabs those
Right.
real quick because she doesn't want Lori to find those.
And we know that those are there left intentionally.
Yes, we learn that
Because
later
at the end of the episode.
Yeah. What does she? What does Lady Trieu call it? It's like a passive aggressive.
Oh yeah, it's
I think I have it written down.
It's a passive aggressive exposition. I think
Yes,
she says.
exposition. Right.
yeah, which is really great, cool line.
Yeah. And again, maybe that's another example of that sort of more meta conversation that the episode might be trying to have. We don't necessarily need that kind of exposition. It's easier to explain some things, and then some other times we do need it to be explained in conversation as exposition, so it feels real in the world.
It's so interesting you bring that up actually, because I was listening to or I don't know how to describe it. I was reading a tweet thread. Now, in my head, I said listening to, like I was listening to someone speak, but it was really just someone tweeting stuff.
Uh-huh.
But it was a tweet thread about this like hard and fast rule of show, don't tell, right? In filmmaking, which is always show, never tell. And he's like, this person said, and I wish I remember who tweeted this, but they're like, that's a dumb thing to say, that you should never tell, because sometimes it makes sense to tell things instead of just show them. Maybe sometimes it's better to tell something because it actually holds something back that you might be able to use later. So this case, it's the definition of, in this, they're like just showing you this bottle of pills, what it's trying to tell you. We don't even fucking know,
And by the end of the episode, we know that it's a device, but we still don't know what the outcome
what
of
the
the
purpose
knowledge
of
of
it
that is.
Mhm.
And then I guess the next scene, Angela back at home, and we get a sequence with her son. They're sleeping, like they fall asleep. She has to sleep in his room because the father fell asleep with the other daughter. And then the son asked if she was scared, and she says, yeah. And then
passes that like
it's really cool. So like
yeah.
the two of them have a very different relationship than she has with the daughters.
Yeah,
because he was old enough to remember his parents, so he has a different understanding.
Right.
So she relates to him on a more like they're equals sort of level.
Like mentor almost.
No, she just like she tells him like straight up how things are. That episode where she explains that the world is black and white in her view and his view, but she's relating to him on the same level and not talking down to him.
And she necessarily didn't lie to him about being at the cemetery, because there was a lot of questions that had to be answered.
I just think it's a cool dynamic to switch from her treating him as an equal, as like essentially treating him as an adult, to the child handing her a stuffed animal when she feels scared. It's like that juxtaposition.
By the way, the stuffed animal, like Bubastis like style animal, right? Like a weird like
it was funny
genetically engineered thing. And then the next thing is the morning, and then like making
transitions with a cracked egg.
Yeah. I really like this scene.
It's cool because you get that traditional heaven and hell type conversation explained to a kid, but in a different way.
And then not in the traditional way. It's made up. It's make believe.
Yeah.
And then
he was nowhere. He was born. He lived a life.
And then
died,
there's nowhere again. Yeah. I actually, this is also weird, but I was watching a commercial with
here we go
Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard in it, and the whole premise of this commercial was we never lie to our kids, right? So they're like these little kids, and they're like a 300-pound man couldn't fit down a chimney, and they're like, we can't. Your father had a vasectomy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then they have fake meat burgers is the joke. So it's, they're plant-based
but
burgers.
they're telling them that it's meat. They are lying about that one thing.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
It's an ad though.
Yeah, it's an ad, but like it's the same. It's like very similar. Like we don't lie to our kids no matter what, and that's very similar. They're like we're not lying, and then even later we know with the husband, he's like he hates lying. This is like his like character trait. The shorthand character trait is he hates lying.
Yeah.
Right. But I think underrated actor or underrated performances. I think he's actually really, really good on the show, especially in this episode.
Yeah, he's great. He's sort of like a rock. Doesn't get a lot of screen time, but when he's on screen, it's valuable time. I think.
Cal, his name, Cal.
Yeah.
Okay. The actor's name is Yahya Abdul Mateen II.
Nice.
Is Yahya?
Yeah, that's his name.
Huh. It's not
hard to pronounce.
Yahya.
That's like that's like every kid's first word.
Yeah.
It's easy to pronounce.
Mm-hmm. I don't think Yahya is a word, but yeah. Okay. And then so the breakfast scene.
Yeah, that's pretty much done now. Now Angela seeks out Looking Glass to help her do some analysis on the pills. She wants it not to be done at the precinct. She knows that Looking Glass has an ex-wife that has a lab, I guess. So she wants this to be undercover, and she also reveals the KKK outfit that Judd had. And Looking Glass doesn't seem to be too shocked or emotional or anything. How do you think?
Yeah, he said like he was a white man in Oklahoma. Of course, he implies, of course, he had some racist tendencies.
He's a white man in Oklahoma.
He does say that he thinks it could have been a keepsake from his granddad, which I think is probably the case. But why? Right? We still don't know why. We don't know the actual.
Was with his granddad? Like, who's the person that the letter's written to? It
is
his
Joe Crawford's granddad. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
he says it's an old fashioned
like
thing.
Yeah, the badge is old. Yeah.
We also get a cool sequence, not sequence, but I guess this scene referencing the squids. There was a huge squid fall that happened where there was bigger ones rather than smaller ones. And then Looking Glass took a bunch of photos of them before they dissolve, which is 30 seconds. They have a 30-second lifespan and they dissolve. Yeah.
30 seconds of life, and all they do is die. Or all they're doing is dying.
Dying the whole time, yeah.
And he's under the assumption that they rain down from another dimension, he mentions.
Right. So it seems to me that in this shelter, like that Looking Glass is very much like a conspiracy theorist sort of character.
Yeah, I think.
He's got a bomb shelter, and he's got a red room, and he's developing pictures of all these squids and whatnot.
It's called a dark room,
but it's also red.
But I'm just saying.
I don't know. I think it's he's still my favorite character in every scene that he's in, even though he didn't have his face on in this scene. It was still pretty cool.
Yeah, that's just him. That's his only scene in this episode. I think next episode he's heavily involved. But yeah, he's tasked with finding out about these pills and hiding that, and hiding. Angela gives him the KKK outfit, so he's got to hide that from Laurie as well.
I mean, do you think Laurie knows who Looking Glass is? I mean, she knows.
She does.
She does.
She says his name and everything. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
last
she saw
episode.
his face last episode.
I thought it was just his like under his.
No,
like,
she made him like lift it up because he said
Right.
his name.
Okay.
His name is Wade something.
Wade Tillman, played by Tim Blake Nelson. By the way, Tim Blake Nelson, I feel like it's so weird because he's not the coolest guy, but like he is pretty freaking cool in this show, and like his voice is just, I feel like, just very iconic. I think that's a very important piece of like his performances. Is
And
like
he's
he
given
said
great dialogue.
when they were playing with it. It like naturally came out of him to speak like that once the mask was on,
like a cowboy,
and well, just not any heightened speed or anything like that. Just very calm and keeping that demeanor, so it doesn't change really when the mask is on. When the mask is off,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, he got it's almost slower when the mask is on, I'd say. Okay, what's next?
Then we catch up with Sister Night disposing of the wheelchair. She sneakily throws it into like a steel truck that's taking garbage, and then we get
She turns around.
We get our first look at Lube Man.
Is that the official name? Have we confirmed that?
Hold on, I'm checking the IMDb, but go ahead.
Lube Man.
That's what they refer to him as. I think Red Scare and Pirate Jenny, when they're kind of making fun of him.
It's crazy. This is another example of one of those things, like you almost like throw your hands up in the air at this episode. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, but what about you? Do you think that it is Petey? Like, for some reason, it's because he was lanky and just kind of weird.
Doesn't
looking.
say, by the way. There's no.
He's skinny.
Keeping that a secret.
Does that make it more interesting that he would be following her and keeping tabs for? He's working with Laurie, right?
Okay, so here's if we're assuming that it is Petey, which I think is likely, because he's also skinny and lanky,
yes,
and obsessed with heroes and obsessed with vigilantes and masks.
And he made up his own, which is just a joke,
which is just like a latex suit. But I don't think what he's doing there, if that is him, he's not doing that under Laurie's command. He's doing it on his own.
Well, yeah, because Laurie's not going to
filling him in on it.
Well, she's not going to abide by someone dressing up in like
their
spandex.
job is to hunt vigilantes.
Yeah.
But also, why would he leave himself so out in the open like that?
He wanted to be seen. It's clearly intentional. He wanted to be seen.
And then get away.
Now he had a getaway plan. That was his way to get away.
It's such a specific. It had to have been planned.
Yeah.
But he has these ketchup bottles of lube or oil or whatever.
What the fuck is this shit?
I think that if it is Petey, that he just didn't think that Laurie or Sister Night would see him.
Yep.
I don't know if it was like intentional.
Wait. That was just like,
why would
it like Grandma's boy?
Chase me that you can see
like
me
up against the wall. No, there's no. Like, he's standing on the road.
Why would it be intentional though? Why would he need Sister Night to see him slide down a sewer drain?
I don't think he needs to see him. I don't know if that's what the goal
intention?
was. I think the goal is for her to be aware that someone's watching her. Yeah.
Well, okay. If that's what you're going for, like the effect is meant to be ominous and threatening, and it didn't really come off that way.
Yeah, but that's why it's supposed to be. It looks like it's. He feel like maybe they like. I think maybe Lube Man thinks it's ominous, right?
The Lubinator.
Yeah.
No, I'll do better.
Okay.
Keep going. I'll think of better.
Anyway, I think he thinks it is.
No.
But is like, oh shit, she's just gonna chase me. That like and like didn't really go down the way they planned. But he still had a kind of an escape plan worked out. But yeah, the loop thing is weird. I don't know. Grease Man.
It's also our first time
the
meeting
greaser.
This character. I don't know if that's like his
Grease Lightning.
Shtick.
Oh, Grease Lightning.
Grease Lightning's not bad.
Anyways, Sister Night goes back to their precinct, but runs into Joe Keane. What'd you think of that?
Again, another one of these weird relationships where he clearly knows who she is and she's pretending like she has to, act a certain way.
He says that and says, "Oh, I'm not supposed to know who you are,"
Yeah.
like in a joking way, which is weird because he kind of came up with this whole thing. But
And it's like in the precinct, basically everyone knows who she is. This is the one place where she doesn't need a mask.
But we've gone over this. I don't think that's necessarily true. Because if one cop knows who everyone else is, all it takes you to get to one cop to get to the others, right? So the idea is you wear the mask all the time and no one knows who you are,
Right.
including your own colleagues.
I guess in the precinct, yeah, like behind closed doors is different, in judge's office is different, but in the general area of the precinct, that's probably true.
And then there's a brief conversation between Sister Knight, Red Scare, and
Pirate
Jenny, where they're saying that the new boss isn't going to care
And by the
about
way,
Lube Man.
Pirate Jenny, her mask is hardly a mask at all. And Red Scare, I was saying this to Dan earlier, but he's got to be the only like Russian guy living in Tulsa that has the thick Russian accent who goes by his code name is Red Scare. Everyone knows this is like it's a terrible. It's not a good.
But like,
come on.
I'm assuming when he goes grocery shopping, he's gonna like either fake an accent or like has a persona. Like
You'd think it'd be the other way around, right? I don't know.
necessarily. I don't know.
He's more yeah.
because when he's wearing the mask, he's less in hide. Like when he's going out in public, he's more trying to hide his identity.
Yeah. I think it's funny like how everyone it's becoming like more and more clear that everyone knows who everyone is, right? And maybe that's kind of a part of this. Like you're undermining this. Like this, you have such a good idea. The cops are wear masks. What a great idea. But then the further we dive into this, the more we realize that it's really not effective because everyone knows who everyone is and it doesn't matter.
But we don't know who Lube Man is. And that's
But he's not a cop.
That's the point of this conversation
Right.
here, is that they're probably not going to revisit it unless he pops up again, because they say, the new chief isn't going to care unless it has something to do with lettuce, watch batteries, or someone wearing a Rorschach mask saying TikTok.
What's
TikTok.
the lettuce thing to do?
Because the lettuce in the
Episode
first
1.
episode, he threw the
Right.
That's part of the joke. But fast forward to the end of the episode when Will, he's saying TikTok.
TikTok.
They specifically mention here a guy wearing a Rorschach mask saying TikTok. So that draws parallels right there with Will and the cavalry.
I just think the idea is it's not to be that simple. It's not as straightforward as if you say TikTok, you are part of the 7th Cavalry. Like
True, but
that's the whole point of that.
I just don't understand why they had to even have that conversation to dismiss Lube Man and only focus on those things, and then we end on the episode of someone saying TikTok.
Someone who is not affiliated with the cavalry.
Right.
I guess the idea,
But the cavalry is affiliated, or they think that we're a part of Crawford's death.
At this point, the cavalry is the easy enemy, and they're the only enemy, really. The fact is that this whole thing with Miss Trieu and Will is so secret that it's not on their radar. Nobody really knows.
Well, we know there is a plan. They have a plan of some kind. We don't know what the plan is. We just know that in 3 days that plan will be executed. That he's betrayed Angela's family in some way, and then she'll be upset, and Miss Lady Trieu will know that Will is fucking confusing. Is fully on board.
Her plan.
See, this is this show.
It's complicated.
And then Angela and Lori meet in Crawford's office, who Lori took over, and we bring up Will again because Lori has gone over the car and scanned it for prints, and has found an unknown set of prints that is not attached to the children or Cal or whatever.
No, the best part of the scene is when she says, or someone's or a friend of yours or something, but you don't really strike me as the type that has friends.
Anyways, she runs it through her database, and the name that pops up is William Reeves, who in the final scene is referenced as Mr. Reeves by Lady Trieu's daughter, or whatever.
Yeah.
And
we find out that he was a cop in New York City in the 40s and 50s.
So this is interesting, right? So that's around the time that the Minutemen were founded. And we know that the Minutemen were founded originally by cops, at least Night Owl for sure, and likely others, Captain Metropolis, I think, as well. So they were cops who decided to start wearing masks at that point. This lends credence to the theory that he might be hooded justice.
Right. And Lori does the math and puts him at 100 years old, which we know is 105 years old, and then realizes that someone that old is going to have to get around in a wheelchair. Who she found the tracks by Crawford's lynching.
So, I think that everything that's happening between Angela and the FBI is really interesting, mostly because it's so clear that she knows that Angela has been covering something, is trying to cover something up. And it's just been I know that you are doing this.
Yeah.
You don't think you're so far ahead of me that I'm not, I'm not following you. I am.
She's always on the right track.
But like, you might be at this stage one step ahead of me in terms of covering your tracks, but I'm on to the fact that you're covering something up.
Right.
And I don't even think that Lori thinks necessarily that what she's covering up is like the answer to what she's looking for. I think what she thinks is, and she says that in the other episode, where it's like, well, you know, we help cover we help the people that we, you know, whatever. I don't remember what the exact line was, but that we think we're the good guys, right? And if we helping the good guys, we think we're also the good guys. But you might be confused the whole time.
Yeah, and
right?
it's actually impressive, and a lot of this is them butting heads. So it's less about what the secret is, more about the fact that like she's got to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I know you have one.
Yeah, like we're similar in that sense.
Also, when she reveals that she knows about the wheelchair, that is when Petey comes into the room. So that could also reference him being Lube Man, because he pops up out of nowhere as soon as she disposes of the wheelchair.
Well, they work together.
maybe,
so
yeah,
I just
Well, they talk about coincidences like right after this.
Yeah, that's
fair
true.
point. Fair point.
And the thermodynamic miracle.
So that's the next scene. They're in
Yes.
the SUV.
Yes.
And they're talking about like, he's like, listen, I know about this stuff. I used to wear masks. You wear masks to like protect yourself from the trauma, or hide the pain. She's like, what does she say? Like, I don't wear masks. Yeah, that's not where I wear a mask. What's the exact line?
Yeah, it's something to the effect of I'm wearing a mask to protect my identity.
Yeah, but
to protect it from the pain.
No, it's like to protect myself. She says to protect myself.
Exactly.
She's like, right, from the trauma.
Yeah.
which again, this is my favorite scene in the whole episode. It's just so full of subtext, and just there's a lot of like exposition happening here. But I think it's a kind of like fun exposition.
Yeah, and
never mind the rape reference, but you know what I mean.
Stuff that's needed, especially for people who are not familiar with the characters.
Yeah, especially when PD kind of goes over the history
Right.
of Laurie's parents, comedian and original Silk Spectre.
But the performances are all really good. I mean,
yeah.
the guy who plays Petey, Dustin Ingram, he comes off as just being so earnest. Like this idea of like, she's like, tell Angela,
Got excited a little.
tell Angela, exactly. Tell Angela about my trauma. Like what a crazy, like what a crazy thing to say to someone. He's like, oh, sure, okay. So yeah, his parents, her parents tried to, like it's fucked. Like. But he comes off as so just being like excited to like go over that in the same way that Daniel gets excited to tell us about some bullshit thing from Lord of the Rings.
I do.
You know?
I really do.
So like, and it just feels real to me. And then, you know, obviously again, the butting heads between Angela and Lori. And it's like, it just works. There's a really like, it's really light. Like it's pretty airy, you know, in terms of like the content they're talking about is heavy, but the way it's performed is really light. And I think I like that kind of like.
I think, the performances are great. The writing itself, especially in that scene, is great. And it does it's a feat to have two characters that we're on both of their sides, but they're not on each other's side. So
Yeah.
we're conflicted as an audience. They're going to come into some sort of alignment later on in the season, but right now it's almost seems like they're working against each other when we know they're both on the same side.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband at some point says that he thinks that Angela should work with her.
Right. Yeah, he does.
But she still says, no, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. She doesn't trust her. She's a loner.
Well, it's what Will says. He's like, she has to, like, I can't tell her stuff. She has to go through it on her own. She's very much that type of person who's like pretty stubborn and like refuses to be helped, often to her own detriment, you know?
And so they're on the way to see Lady Trieu at the clock tower or whatever, because they got a lead about some of the equipment that is there, which are these giant flying
like hover ships.
Yeah, hover ships that obviously was the culprit for taking Angela's car.
Yeah,
and
it's
Will.
also not clear what they're designed for. Like, what are they doing in the field? What's the purpose of these machines?
I mean,
I don't know.
To build a tower that big, you could
Instead of
it's like
yeah.
a giant drone that you lift pieces up.
It's not instead of a crane. Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
exactly
all
what
right,
it's for. Again, King hung up on weird stuff.
I'm not hung up on it. I'm asking the questions, man.
And then they're just trying to track down all the people. They want to get a list of all the people who are able to fly this vehicle, which leads them to Lady Trieu's daughter, and then she brings them to Lady Trieu. But there's an interesting kind of conversation that happens between the daughter and Lori, where the daughter's talking about places that were swallowed up by sea or toppled by earthquakes, and that they're building something new. And Lori references it to be the eighth wonder of the world, but Lady
First
True's
wonder
ours
of the new world. Yeah.
So it's a place 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean, fortified and impervious to seismic activity, and can withstand anything short of a direct nuclear blast.
I was joking with Dan that like they basically just described Winnipeg when they did that. It's like we're so far from any ocean. There really is no earthquakes here.
Well, yeah, we're
Floods,
the Canadian
just
Shield.
floods. Yeah.
And then so that's all explained, and then Angela, I believe, asks, what does it do? And then all she says is it tells time.
Tells time.
What is it? It's like what? Okay, what do you think they mean by tells time?
We're not there yet. But she's got to be connected to Dr. Manhattan in some capacity.
Yes.
Especially with Veidt's situation and where he could be.
It's so hard to make predictions about this show. What do you mean it tells time? Like, it has to have something to do with Dr. Manhattan's perception.
Well, they specifically say that it's not just a clock, right? Earlier in the episode, it's not just a clock. What does a clock do? It tells time. Those are like, that's the only job a clock does.
So those are the only actual pieces of information that we have about this thing.
Right.
It's just a huge monument.
It's not just a clock, but it tells time.
Exactly.
It looks very alien.
Those two things are like counter like to each other, right? Like it's not just a clock implies that it does more than just tells time.
Yeah, they're not counter. Like it's not just a clock. So it does tell time and do other stuff.
Right.
So it's both.
And then this is the scene where we get Lady Trieu and
Time
Angela talking Vietnamese, and her secretly saying to her, what does she say? Oh, your grandfather wants to know if you got the pills.
Hmm.
And then Angela replies back, tell that old fucker he can ask me himself.
But in Vietnamese, and it's good.
Keep saying Vietnamese. It's crazy.
I don't. I'm saying
It's fucking
Vietnamese.
Okay.
I'm saying it right.
Yes.
I
But
can't wait
to
listen
Lori,
to the playback.
they're both classic expressions of grief.
Right.
But in that
I know. He's like, I've never heard that one before. It's very beautiful. Her line reading of that is
It's
honestly
good.
so perfect. I love it so much. I could just rewatch it over and over again. I mean, it's meme worthy.
And then out of nowhere, Lori's like, holy shit, like what the hell is that? Is that Adrian Veidt? And there's this golden statue of Adrian Veidt, but more specifically, it is an older version of him, the current version of him.
Yeah.
Which Lori doesn't understand because it just looks
He looks like shit.
it looks like shit. Is what she says.
Yeah.
But
This is America,
revere it
sweetheart.
because it just signifies success or something like that.
Well, she says that in her culture, we respect our elders.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also kind of, it becomes clear that she sort of reveres Veidt, or at least is acting like she reveres Veidt, much like he revered Alexander the Great. It has that same feeling to it. It may not be the case. They may actually be rivals.
I think it might be more like a misnomer. Like she knows the relationship that she had, or that Lori had with Veidt, and it might be using that to like get under her skin a bit, you know?
Trieu is doing that?
Yeah.
Like, so she built the statue for that purpose?
That doesn't seem
I mean, yeah,
unlikely to you.
she's a trillionaire, so she can do whatever
Yeah.
she wants. But like, I imagine that's not the reason the statue was built ahead of time.
Right.
But then we end there and we transition to Ozymandias, who it's nighttime. He's on some sort of lake and he is fishing for fetuses.
Oh my God, it's
The
so
weirdest scene in any TV show.
I told
He's
Dan right
throwing
before it
some-
happened. I was
Why do you
like,
think he's throwing some away? They just don't.
some of them are just not viable.
defective.
Not viable.
Not
Yeah.
viable. Yeah. One. Yeah. Okay.
Or does he have too many and he's not allowed to take more?
Well,
than
he had
two,
so many.
more than two at a time, right? Because there's that whole game warden.
Well, I guess it
thing.
doesn't make sense to take more than two at a time because he only has a machine.
The
that has two.
microwave can only fit two.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's only room for two babies
So
in
I
that
guess
microwave.
we learn a lot about Crookshank and Mr. Phillips here, right? Where they come from, how fast they're able to come into existence.
Yeah, I think that's huge in terms of understanding their relationship, but does absolutely nothing to explain what the fuck else is going on.
And so we kept mentioning, or I kept mentioning that the comic within a comic, right? The Black Freighter is the American hero story.
Yeah.
It's actually Veidt's story because he's utilizing all these dead people around him for himself to survive.
Much like in the Black Freighter, he
which is
builds
the
a raft
yes,
out of the
floating
dead
on those
bodies.
dead bodies.
Holy shit! I've never.
Well, in the
really
ultimate
paid
cut,
attention
it's
to it.
in there.
Okay.
And then there's this sequel. So yeah, we get the introduction. He says happy birthday, gives them the whole spiel that I am your master. Your only purpose is to serve, but also like weird spats
Oh my God.
about like
This
how
the
he
best-
didn't create them and he wouldn't.
Yeah. So there's so many cool parts. The part where he says He's like, I'm certainly
I'm your master, but not your maker.
creator. Or not your maker, which is great. There's
Never
also
would burden like this world with your pathetic.
right. Well, he says like
creatures.
to live is to have purpose, and you have no other purpose but to serve. Essentially, showing us that he doesn't consider these people to be living. They're not.
Yes.
They're just tools.
They're just tools.
And
he says it.
and
He
that's what we've
specifically says it later.
And that's what we've basically seen so far.
Yeah.
But then right after that, we see that dining room hall where there is
murders,
like 50 dead.
So did he just murder them? He said he had a rough night. Do you think he just like lost it?
Yeah,
because
he was covered in blood.
Yeah.
Or he got them to kill each other and stuff. But we learned that he needs those dead bodies to use them as test subjects in launching them.
Right. He says specifically, whatever, like I'll use your broken, mangled bodies. If I have to, I'll use your broken, mangled bodies to escape this.
Yeah,
like,
which is again Black Freighter, like 100%.
Right.
So again, whether it's the moon or Mars, this is certainly, we said it was definitely a prison. This is something we talked about last week.
Also, just quick, he says, I don't need the horseshoe yet. So there's a specific
what's that all
sequence to where
I also
Mr.
thought that
Phillips
was
will
weird.
have to hand him a horseshoe at some point for something. But a horseshoe, what do we know as a horse? It's for obviously a horse's foot, but also like to throw in something.
Yeah, we play
like
it for a
right,
game.
to land on something specific.
Yeah, and they show that specifically when he hits the knife and it looks like he's playing horseshoes.
Right.
You're saying that you're asking those questions like that means something, but it doesn't necessarily
It's another
mean
question.
anything.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's a good
It's an
question.
answer
It's
and
just,
another question.
at this point, it's completely arbitrary. Like,
Yeah.
no
But
way to know.
we also learned that he's been there for 4 years. That he was sent there, which he was convinced that it was a paradise at first, but realized that it was a prison.
So I think that speaks to what we were saying before. A question that I had posed before was, what's the time? Like, how do the timelines play out? It was first year, second year, third year. This is now fourth year.
Yeah.
Every time we look at this, it's been 1 day of 1 year.
Right.
And we can see again, it's the same day because he's eating the cake.
Yeah.
Right. This time again.
Yeah.
No
4 candles, but you make that assumption. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's so confusing, but still, I think some of my favorite parts of this show is this stuff.
It's so good. And then
it doesn't hurt that you have Jeremy Irons and just
having fun,
chewing scenery, man. Like he's just eating it up.
And then we get the visual of the catapult and where these bars are going, which is away from this dome-like area. And he's doing it over and over and over again. We know he has a spacesuit. So clearly, when you get launched out of that barrier, you are in some sort of cold space.
Yeah.
Whether it's Mars, whether it's the moon. Mars seems more likely based off the Dr. Manhattan castle structure. Yeah. But then the connection with
the transition.
Trieu.
Yeah.
Well, just before with Trieu and her buying the company. And
yeah, but I think the only connection we have, like, where's the buying the company thing have to do with Mars?
Well, I would say if Dr. Manhattan can see the future, he wants Lady Trieu in charge to do whatever she's good at and wherever she comes from, her purpose, and leave Veidt out of it.
I think I just feel like we're making a lot of assumptions there, and I don't know.
Well, that's what they all can be, basically.
The only information, the only information we have is that one transition from the clouds to the moon, which I think we might be reading too much into that. I think it's just as likely that it's Mars because we have the information of him building that looks like a castle, Dr. Manhattan building a castle on Mars.
Too, yeah.
But also, how do they get that image of him building a castle on Mars?
Yeah,
that's another
space cameras.
Well,
space cameras.
Some people might think that Dr. Manhattan isn't there. That is just a deep fake type thing.
Or yeah. Or, or for the government, whatever.
The government too.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. There's a lot of man. Fuck this show.
No, this is what we want. It's early.
I know,
but 4 episodes in. We just had 3.
It's only we're halfway there, basically.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're not. Wow.
It's hopefully one of those things where this will all make sense once it's said and done. At the end of the season, we'll be like, the last couple episodes will be like, oh shit, that's what that was about.
I feel like we're posing a lot of questions. I think it would be nice if we could just like make some more definitive statements. But we just
have
can't.
another major question I'll pose at the end.
Okay.
But I guess we should go to the next scene, which is the last scene. No, it's not the last scene. We go back to Angela's house. And this is that scene with the husband where they kind of go over their trust issues, but he didn't divulge anything to Lori. He kept it secret, all that stuff. And Angela reaffirms that, I'm going to do it myself. So we still don't know if she's really going to work with Lori. Probably not, but maybe.
Eventually,
with the,
yes.
with the convincing of her husband. But then we cut to Lady Trieu's daughter waking up from a dream. So this is very cool. She dreams of, it's a nightmare, she calls it,
Running
where
away.
she's in a village where men are burning shit down, and she was made to walk for a very long time. And more importantly, when she wakes up, currently she tells her mother,
Her
Lady
feet
Trieu,
hurts.
that her feet still hurt.
So do we think?
And Lady Trieu says good.
So I think what we're led to, if I can just guess, I think we're led to believe that there is some sort of memory that transitions, like that
Yeah.
passes through
Yeah.
in the cloning process.
Yeah,
Right?
she was definitely a clone baby, much like what she was delivering to the Clarks in the very first
Right, I think-
episode.
yeah.
This is different
Or
though.
beginning of the episode.
This is, if again, assuming that she is a clone. It's not just cloning the body; it's cloning the mind, is what we're saying, right? These are experiences from Lady
There's
Trieu's
fragments.
It's, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
but that's not at all how Mr. Phillips and Miss Christian.
Yeah, exactly. But I also wanted to touch on that earlier, and we talked about this before we were recording, is that I think calling those clones is a misnomer because clones don't grow in rivers or lakes.
Well, they
You know?
could. I mean, it's weird that, and that's a good point because he also makes a clear point of saying that I'm not your maker, but I'm your master.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's harvesting babies out of the
Exactly.
lake.
Wait, that's a lot of questions. Like, how do they end up in these weird lobster cages, all that kind of stuff, whatever. But those, I don't think, are clones in the the standard sense of a clone.
Okay, but they are clones, right?
I-
There's a,
but-
They're clones of each other, but not
Exactly.
clones, or like they're. And even then, I don't feel like I don't know
But-
if the word clone is the right word.
Maybe not.
for
But
that.
it might be though, because the connection to Lady Trieu and this mother,
Right.
it isn't necessarily there because she won't console her and walk her to bed. She says no,
Right.
and then the daughter just says, "Okay, I'll go on my own." And then she says, "Good night, Mr. Reeves." That's when we finally see Will again, and how he's friends with Lady Trieu, and we
Right.
get
Well,
a
she.
huge
By the way,
reveal.
Mr. Reeves Will calls her out for that. By the way, in that scene, basically says is like, "How is what you're doing different
than what I'm doing,
than what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
doing with
Giving her
yeah.
pieces of the truth, and
Exactly.
whatnot. And then we get a huge reveal of him
There's
standing
a
up.
weird
out of the
line
wheelchair.
though, right? There's a weird line in that he's like, she says it's like 50% of a lie or something like it's something along that line. It's really weird. It's very fast, and then they move on past it. But like, it's basically
It's
her
half
yeah.
truth.
But that's not. Yeah. Right.
And
But,
that's
yeah.
kind of what Angela did with her son, the half truth.
yeah.
What they're doing with their kids. And there's just a bunch of examples of that.
Half
here.
truths. Yeah.
But then, we get the reveal of Will standing up out of the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty cool reveal.
Was he in a wheelchair or just a chair?
at that point, he was in a chair, but the
Yeah.
fact is we had
We-
never seen him standing before.
That's fair, and he walks totally fine. It's like he's difficult.
yeah.
Is there like, are we supposed to believe that maybe her cloning technology is like
Well, it's-
stem cell esque in that
Yeah, yeah,
fashion,
yeah.
or
It's,
like
it's either that or he was faking it the entire time. Like, and then that was
Mm.
like something that he used sort of like a secret identity so that he wouldn't be like,
Yeah,
he
man, I
wouldn't
think
pay
what
much
you
attention.
And
Yeah.
leading Angela down a different path to not believe that maybe he was the one who lynched Crawford.
right, like
how
you
can you
couldn't
do
have done
that?
it. You
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah,
that from.
But
sitting.
now we know for sure that he definitely did.
Yeah, guys,
But it's
he obviously did.
to Lady Trieu's point, like he's putting a lot of work into deceiving her when he's trying to tell her something. Like
Mhm.
you could just come out and say, at least be a little less cryptic about things.
And that's when they talk about being cryptic, right? When she mentions the pills being passive aggressive exposition. And she's concerned that when family is involved, it can skew your decisions.
Yeah.
Again, meaning that her kids really aren't her family. She doesn't really care about these kids.
Yeah, she's very Machiavellian.
Just
in
using
that sense.
And then that is when he stands up. He even says, "My feet are just fine."
Right,
which is
because he was referenced to the
referencing-
cold feet thing.
Yeah.
It's also another example of that classic Watchmen, the dialogue
Mhm.
and the visuals lining up. Not literal, like in this case, literally, but it's
Mhm.
not designed. To
Well,
be-
sometimes it's literally lining up, but not in context of the
yeah,
conversation.
they're referencing something else.
Right.
And that's when he posed the question, how much longer? Lady Trieu says 3 days. So that's by ramping up, there's 3 days. Something's going to happen to where Angela will know that Will betrayed her,
Mm-hmm.
and she will know and what he's done and hate him for it.
Yeah. So
Which means that once that happens, Lady Trieu will know that Will is in all the way.
also, does she not already hate him? But
Kind of.
so it raises a couple of questions. From a timeline perspective, I think it highlights the fact that it seems like every episode is essentially 24 hours, or
Give
the
or
equivalent of just a day You know, we get a day's worth of stuff, and it really seems like a lot's happened in like 4 days. You know, if you really think about it, between between the sheriff being murdered and or the captain, I guess, chief, yeah, being murdered, and then everything that's happened since is all really only taken place over 4 days. It's pretty like, even they referenced last time, like, well, you guys are having a funeral pretty fast, right? It was 2 days later. So when you say 3 days, does that mean 3 episodes?
I mean, that would line up, right? That's episode 7. That's when things are at the peak. That's sort of the apex.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah,
because Looking Glass is a center point in the next episode with Laurie, I believe. So we're not going to be focusing on Will and that.
Yeah, I don't think we're saving 3 days ahead next week. I think it would be weird for them to go from every episode is essentially a day to skipping time.
Yeah.
Right. And that even might mean that, like, from a timeline perspective, everything is consistent. So next time we see Veidt will be 1 year following the last time we saw him. Right. And he'll have like maybe kind of like unwound a little bit even more because it looks like he's fucking coming undone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He's saying he will escape this godforsaken place.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but that's, you know, what does he look like a year from that? Right. And when does that match up with our time? Like how quickly, maybe he'd launch it. Maybe at some point he launches something that is like, is that meteorite from this episode?
Yeah.
Right. But we'll see that
communicating
like
with
3
Trieu,
episodes ago, you know, or like 2 episodes from now or 3 episodes from now. Like, I think that is where those things line up. And I would call bullshit on the show if it fucks with timelines after 4 weeks of being consistent, basically, with how they tell time. Because if you fuck with how you tell time in a show, it's the easiest way to confuse somebody or mislead somebody, and I think that's bullshit.
But it depends on the reveal of what that meteorite crash is.
Yeah, no, it could.
Sets the
That's
episode up
example.
about legacy, right? It's all about family, where you come from, and all that stuff.
Well, Veidt
so
Enterprises,
if that thing is connected to something in that regard, then I think it pays off greatly.
Right. Well, Veidt Enterprises, the legacy of that, she bought that, and whatever, and then
that lives on is the point. The blood from your ancestors, and that continues.
Right. So I think, like I said, I would, and it doesn't seem like, right. And Game of Thrones made the mistake of fucking with timelines and playing around with that stuff, and it pissed people off. And doesn't seem like the show's interested in doing that, which I think is a good thing.
Well, it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
There's also no reason to believe that it will.
No, I agree. So I think when they say 3 days, I think we can confidently say 3 episodes. If that changes, and then I think it's like a good canary in the coal mine to like tell us if the show's fucking with timelines or not.
Right.
And I think that's important.
Which it kind of is, just because we know that we're operating on different timelines already with Veidt versus the rest.
Well,
of the
we
story.
don't, because they haven't made that express, but we've kind of like
fair enough. We're assuming
made,
a lot of that, but we know that we are assuming that we're on a couple different timelines.
So
2
with
specifically.
the end of this episode, I guess we don't really have any new theories going from this episode, right?
Just many more question marks.
Yeah, a couple answers, more.
Why are there lake babies? Nobody knows.
I mean, again, there's more than just fucked up lake babies in that world, right? We know that there's like tomatoes that grow on trees.
That, yeah.
And stuff like that, like weird stuff like that. It looks like an apple, but it's a tomato. Stuff like weird, like mixes of stuff.
Genetic engineering that Veidt's
that's easy to believe as being why that might have been the case. But now when you expand the world out, you grow like what's actually happening. That doesn't explain lake babies. So
who knows?
Yeah.
It's 9 episodes in the season. This is number 4. So right now we don't have a lot of answers.
We just got introduced to Lady Trieu, which is she's obviously a major component.
And that's the thing. So last episode was Laurie. This episode was largely Lady Trieu, I guess, if you had to pick who was like focusing on in terms of the backstory.
Right. So
and next episode is Looking Glass, like you said.
But just to cap this episode off, what I saw on the internet, speaking of thermodynamic miracles and connections, is someone, and based off Lady Trieu and Angela in Vietnam, and also the comedian and the war there.
I follow.
What if Lady Trieu could potentially be the comedian's daughter? based off of the remember the scene where he kills the pregnant lady that he
Oh, so
impregnated.
you think that they saved the baby? Is what you're saying?
Are you speaking of a scene specifically from the movie?
Oh, sorry, from the comic.
From the
When
comic.
there's a scene where Dr. Manhattan watches comedian commit a murder, but the point of it was
He could have stopped
it.
But he
And
didn't.
it was a pregnant Vietnamese lady who
That the comedian had impregnated,
yeah.
and he just gunned her down.
Yeah.
Some dark
And
stuff.
so you think about the memories, right? Of the
that's
daughter,
a
right?
holy shit.
Burning, running, like all that stuff.
Almost it. Oh, that's really good, Jeremy.
Yeah.
That's some good work. That's some good work right there. And you know what? I don't see any reason that's not the case.
Legacy, right?
Yeah, legacy.
Yeah.
And then
It
again,
ties in very
legacy,
nicely.
and then
But again, what does this fucking tower do? That looks like an alien.
who gives a shit? Yeah. Do you think it like? Do you think
The cavalry and the watch batteries?
okay? 50%. Oh, the watch battery things. I completely forgot about that. But like, the cavalry seems so small fry now. You know, like who gives a shit about these fucking like
Right.
racists?
Yeah,
They're
we
being
switched
used.
perspectives a little
Yeah.
bit.
They're being used.
Yeah, as a ruse.
They're being used as a ruse.
They're being
They're being rused as a used.
Come on. They're like a false flag. They're distracting everybody, right? There's something larger at play.
They're distracting the Tulsa police, but like that's not a like
Well,
what we're talking
and
about.
the FBI.
No, just these two people from the
but
FBI.
It's also clear that Joe Keane, if he becomes president, he's going to make the DOPA Act nationwide.
Again, dumb name. They're really bad with their
they
acronyms.
called it. They said it was dumb.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they said
okay.
it within the episode.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
All right, I think that's good for this week. We kind of went through everything at length.
Yeah.
We're actually right now about to jump into our Watchmen movie club episode.
Yeah, we're not even gonna start recording. We're just gonna keep going, right?
Yeah,
Which is essentially the comic, the source material.
Yeah. This is
apart from a few things.
Zack Snyder's movie is basically a direct translation, almost.
Except for the
Minus
ending.
one very key piece.
There's a couple
But
minor
it's
differences.
self-contained and not really. That's why it's more self-contained than the book was, because
Right.
this is a continuation of the book, and it can't be.
I know, which is why it's that's why it's so
Unless
crazy.
you don't think about the end. You
That's
just
why
think,
it's so
okay,
crazy.
Squid
Yeah.
Monster
Well,
attack.
because there's just a thing that happened and it turns out it was a
pinned
squid.
on Dr. Manhattan, right? That's why
Right.
it changed it completely.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then I think that would actually ultimately change so many things
Yeah.
of the reality of
Going
the show,
forward.
because so much of the technology is based on Dr.
Yeah.
Manhattan's
You wouldn't
technology.
have Booth talking to Dr. Manhattan. He wouldn't be
Right. No one
this
would know.
hero
Everyone would.
figure.
Yeah, he would be a demonic figure. Yeah, exact. So like, that's a good point. I think the show has to follow the book, and it's almost like I feel like if Warner Brothers had their way, if they had a time machine, they would go back and change that movie to make it more like this, more like the book, to
hard to
fix
say.
that.
Yeah, but I think we were all in agreement. We'll get
Also,
into
release it at a different time. Would
that
be, yeah.
the Squid Monster would have been too out of nowhere, and it would have had to have more of a build up and a better, like, because in the comic, right, there was just the aftermath, like the murders
Well,
of the
there's-
squid, because it died. It didn't like stay thriving.
It's complicated, and we'll probably talk about it in the show that we're about to record. This show itself is probably coming to an end right now, because that's more there than here.
No, I think you're right. But as the producer, I just want to mention a couple things. So the film club episodes are Patreon exclusives and have been since we started, and that will continue to be the case. I think for the time being, we may release old episodes going forward. That's unclear at this time. That being said, the Watchmen Film Club is going to be released wide to
Yeah, it's
everybody.
a bonus one.
Yeah, which is really exciting. I think for multiple reasons. A, because of the show, the timing makes sense. But it gives everyone a glimpse into what that experience is like, what the film club experience is like, and we're going to make it much more. How do I want to say this? Community based. I think we would like to make it more community based.
Eventually,
yeah.
we'd like to get to the point eventually where people, and we've already have had people submit like their choices, like watch Tombstone or watch whatever movie it is.
Tombstone.
That's one of them. So I would love to get to the point where we have people that are choosing the movies for us, essentially.
Right. And so regardless, I think it's a really fun way to interact with the community. I would, and part of that is telling us your thoughts on those films, and we can discuss them and talk about it and ask questions, all that kind of stuff. So Patreon.com/TowerBabblecast is where you're going to get to do that. It's $5 per month is the minimum. No, it's the minimum to get access to that stuff. You can donate as much as you like. But I would highly recommend, doing that. It makes a huge difference to us, and I think you'll get a lot of bonus content and fun use out of that. So, again, Patreon.com/TowerBabblecast, and there's gonna be a lot to talk about with the Watchmen stuff, specifically how I think it's a movie ahead of its time, which we will talk about in essentially. Like, I looked at my wrist like there's a watch there. There's no watch
here.
there.
It's a 3.5-hour movie. Like,
it's not actually a 3.5-hour movie. This one you have is.
Yeah.
But this is the definitive version of the movie.
It's no. Would you rephrase it this way? Would the Lord of the Rings extended cut be the definitive version of the film?
I can't watch the theatricals.
Okay. All right. Is it only because it's more? Is it actually better or just more? Those are different things.
But in this case, they're the same.
And we're so far past it that when you want to dive back into it, why not just have everything that's available?
Sure. So are we suggesting that for those of you who are listening to this Watchmen recap, that if they're going to listen to the Watchmen Film Club episode, that they should seek out the 3.5 hour
ideally,
movie?
yes, but
Not
it's not
necessarily.
required. The theatrical version or the director's cut. I prefer the director's cut. I haven't seen this version that we're about to watch.
I'd probably do
Director's cut, I
even
think,
going
would
into
be-
this
yeah.
one, because no matter what, like an animated movie intercut with a live action movie is going to feel
It's not great.
discombobulated a
Yeah,
little bit.
I don't think it's great.
Even though it might refer to certain things that are happening in the movie, it doesn't translate as well as it does reading a book.
There's a reason that kind of stuff is never actually done in an
So
actual theatrical release.
This is just for pure fans who want to
Yeah.
just encompass themselves with all of Watchmen
I agree with that.
stuff.
That being
Okay.
said, we're going to be talking about this version of the movie. So if you haven't watched it, there will be things that you're missing out on theoretically.
You could say watch that and watch the Black Freighter stuff, and they'll probably be fine.
Right.
All right. So on that note, Dan, do you want to close it out?
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with episode 5. I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
It's fine. No one knows. They're
Yeah.
too long.
Yeah. The names are ridiculous. I know one of the episodes, I think it's the penultimate episode, is called A God Walks Into a Bar. It's sort of a riff off of A Guy Walks Into a Bar.
Well, and also plays off the jokes that Laurie Blake was telling.
Exactly.
Kind of,
Yeah.
And
Jokes
in a
with
trailer at one point, I believe it looked like it was like a blue hand, like a Dr. Manhattan reaching down and
Yeah,
grabbing a
yeah,
Dr. Manhattan mask. Whether that's really him or not, who knows?
Manhattan's going to be part of the show.
They already said they would. He already has been technically in some fashion, but that's not what they meant. Yeah.
And we'll get to that when the time comes. And for the time being, thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week.